Welcome into the Dental Profits webinar series. It's high noon in Nashville, Tennessee. And today we're going to talk about afternoon meetings, why they suck, and what you can do about it. Stay with us. And welcome back to the Dental Profits webinar series. I am Sean Crabtree, your host. This show is all about you having happier clients, better results, making more money, and enjoying the ride. And this conversation is one of the most impactful conversations that can allow you to do that. I hope that we're going to have a whole bunch of questions here that I can answer about this conversation, which is afternoon meetings, why they suck and what you can do about it. It occurs to me that the first thing I would like to know is how many of you are actually having afternoon meetings. And that's probably the first thing we should talk about. What is the purpose of an afternoon meeting? I find that a lot of offices, not just in dentistry, but in all industries, are having morning meetings. But when it comes to afternoon meetings, sometimes they don't understand the value. So we should talk about what is the purpose of the afternoon meeting. And I'll just tell you in my own words, here's the purpose of the afternoon meeting. Last week we talked about in the morning meeting, the whole purpose is to focus on the important stuff, right? Lay out your goals, figure out where you're trying to get to today, what's the shortfall of where you're going today versus where you're trying to get to today, and what do you need to do to make it up? That's what you go through in the morning meeting. We talked about being prepared. We talked about having done your due diligence the day before, so you come into this morning meeting not discovering where the solutions are, but communicating where those solutions are, what you need from everybody. That's the whole purpose of the morning meeting. We talked about eliminating discussion mode by having one person be in charge and things like that. Your afternoon meeting is like the polar opposite of that. Your afternoon meeting is actually, here's the way. I had an office in Alabama one time, and the lead assistant, who was the operative frontline leader, explained it best when she said this: the afternoon meeting is our opportunity to take out the trash. And that's the way she looked at it. And I sort of agree with that analogy. The afternoon meeting is the only time that you have to be back together after having played hard all day and after having laid out where you're trying to go in the morning meeting, making requests of one another. Your afternoon meeting is a time to come back together and sort of debrief, right? Take out the trash. Number one, it's an opportunity to celebrate all of the things that worked, specifically those requests that you guys made of each other in the morning meeting. It's an opportunity to review those, acknowledge the people and the things that made it really work, what worked well about today, and who specifically and what specifically made today work well. Acknowledge those things and really celebrate it. It's also an opportunity to get solutions for those things that did not work well. Now, notice I didn't say, talking about problems. It's not about that. It's about getting solutions for opportunities that were not maximized. There are glaring problems, if you want to use that word, that you guys have throughout the course of a day. Certainly, you want to get solutions for those problems. I want to tell you how in just a second. But I think one of the biggest opportunities that's missed in an afternoon meeting, hey, Dana, the queen of afternoon meetings, Dana is watching. Dana, you feel free to jump in and correct me and give me your opinion on this. I started to say one of the biggest opportunities that I see that's missed in afternoon meetings is simply focusing on the problems and not looking for the opportunities that were not maximized. Okay, let me give you a good example, one that we see all the time. If you're late for the afternoon meeting, there's an opportunity that's not maximized. And far too often, I see teams that are having afternoon meetings run late to the afternoon meeting, and they don't even see that the fact they're running late is an opportunity that can be maximized. That's the number one thing. If you're running late to the meeting, that's the number one thing you need to get a solution for, is the fact that we're running late. If we're running late, there is something somewhere that we've not taken control of, and that's one of the first things that we need to dive into and get a solution for. A solution, by the way, is only a solution if you have something very specific that somebody's going to be or do different. And that's one of the first warning shots I want to throw out there. We talked about this in the morning meeting. Now is not the time for discussion. One of the things that will help you with discussion is the same thing we talked about in the morning meeting. You need to have somebody whose job it is, whose charge it is, to watch the dynamics, have the wherewithal to interrupt, and make sure that we are staying on track. How do you make sure that we're staying on track? Here's some things that will really help you stay on track. When it comes to an afternoon meeting, the communication needs to be a request. It needs to be a commitment or a recommitment. It needs to be a direct communication to somebody about something that didn't work. And that's pretty much it. Outside of what we talked about a moment ago, which is acknowledgement, celebrating the good stuff, outside of that, those are pretty much the three ways you're going to communicate. Throwing a statement out into the middle of the room, okay, and then allowing that turn into a discussion is not going to work. Dana says, be on time, be prepared, stay on track. Have the person who's responsible, good answer, Dana, have the person who's responsible for the meeting come up with a plan for the flow. In other words, what Dana's saying there is have an agenda. We're not talking about a full page agenda. We're talking about big chunks, right? Step one, we're going to talk about the things that are working, acknowledge the people and the things that made it happen. Step two, we're going to talk about the things that are not working, but we're not going to discuss them, right? You've got people who are responsible. If you listen to this channel at all, if you're watching any of our other channels, then you've got people who are responsible for areas of the practice. Part of the agenda item needs to be going around the room and having those people either make a request, have a direct communication, or recommit to something, and that's how you maximize those opportunities. It's not a free-for-all for somebody just to throw a big statement in the middle of the floor, and then somebody's going to run with that, and then everybody puts their 2 cents in. Before you know it, you spend a whole hour on an afternoon meeting, you're not gotten anywhere, and everybody's looking at their watch thinking, geez, I'd like to be home. I would try to keep the afternoon meeting 15 to 20 minutes. If it goes a little longer, that's okay, as long as you're being productive, okay? Time spent in a productive afternoon meeting can save you hours throughout the course of a day. So back to where we're talking about. Don't allow it to be in discussion mode. Get one person to be the person who's responsible for running that meeting and making sure that we're staying on task. The communication, that person's job is to make sure that the communication only needs to be in those 3 formats that we talked about. You're not making a statement to the group as in, here's the problem, right? Because then everybody's going to jump in with what the solution is. It needs to be a request. It needs to be a direct communication. It needs to be some kind of a recommitment, right? One of those big opportunities we talked about is not just talking about problems, but finding opportunities that can be maximized. Let's talk about that at a deeper level. If you've got areas like we talked about, like all of the other videos that we talk about, you have areas of responsibility in the practice, you have tracking going on. Your afternoon meeting is the time to walk through that tracking. I don't mean in an official way necessarily. I mean all of us come to this afternoon meeting. Part of the agenda needs to be we all have our tracking. We're walking through the tracking. Any area that is not 100% means there's an opportunity. Let me say that again. Any area that is not 100% means there is an opportunity. What we're supposed to be doing in the afternoon meeting is identifying that opportunity and through a request, a recommitment, or a direct communication to somebody, getting a solution. And a solution is only a solution if I have something very specific that somebody's going to do or be different with a time frame that we're starting, right? It's only a solution if I have something very specific that somebody's going to do or be different with a time frame that we're starting. Okay, so as the facilitator or the person who's running that afternoon meeting, your main focus is to keep us on track with that. I would submit that you need to have a, call it a sergeant at arms, okay, for the purpose of this video. That person needs to be focused on, are we absolutely bringing out all of the opportunities that we're discovering in our tracking? Again, everything that is not at 100% means, or excuse me, anything that's not 100% means there's an opportunity and it needs to be brought up within those confines. I have to tell you that I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we see. There are some glaring things that are big opportunities that need to be talked about in the afternoon meetings. There are so many more things that we're avoiding because we don't recognize them as opportunities. If something is at, treatment acceptance, let's say, great opportunity to walk through all the things that you've learned on this channel in terms of intake calls, chairside processes, and financial recordings. It's a great opportunity to walk through. Anybody who did not accept the complete treatment plan, did not pay, at least for their portion, depending on your insurance scenario, for that complete treatment plan and schedule, that means it's an opportunity. I think we have a tendency to go, hey, when we first started out with this, our treatment acceptance rate was like 19%. Now we're at 30%. Sweet, there's nothing to talk about. No. If you're not at 98 or 100%, if you have one person that didn't schedule or didn't accept the full treatment plan, that's an opportunity, and there's something that we can learn, and that's how you break it down. That's in the coaching process. And if you are the sergeant at arms, your job is to make sure and identify those opportunities. Anything that is not completely maximized is something we need to get a solution for every single day. And that's the way we look at afternoon meetings. Like every day is an opportunity to be a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. If your afternoon meetings and your morning meetings are really on point, then today is better than yesterday. Tomorrow is better than today. 3 weeks from now, it's a completely different atmosphere. 3 months from now, it's a totally different culture. I want you to be successful in your afternoon meetings. I want you to be focused on where those opportunities lie. Implement those few things. The other thing I want to talk to you about before we wrap this up is, Cameron says, clean up what happens so we can implement today, so we can implement changes tomorrow. I totally would agree with that. The other thing I would want to talk to you about is communication. Okay, you guys all run really hard throughout the course of a day. We had a morning meeting. We laid out requests for support all around the table, and then we, boom, went to work. Throughout the course of a day, all sorts of things happened. You have to remember that your relationships with each other are the most important thing. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I do a little bit. They're the most important thing because that's why you're here at the end of the day. But from a non-selfish standpoint, you guys are going to take better care of your patients if your relationships are absolutely in place. And communication is a big piece of that. Throughout the course of a day, we're all busy, we're running, we got a lot of stuff happening at once. Maybe there's some things that were said, maybe there were some things that were done that are not moving our relationships forward. Now is an opportunity to clean that up. As Cameron said, it's an opportunity to clean up all the stuff that happened today. The biggest ones we've mentioned, okay, number one, the opportunities that are glaring. Number two, those opportunities that are not so glaring, they're not giant problems, but they're areas that are not fully maximized. And number three, focusing on your relationships, your communication with each other. Now's an opportunity to go around the table and maybe recommit to somebody about something that you've done, make a request of somebody about something that's happened, or communicate directly to somebody about something that's happened. If you do that, you've started with the things that are working, you've identified the things that are not fully maximized and the things that are not working, and then you've ended with putting those expectations and those relationships back in place. Yet now you ought to be able to go home and not think about it. You ought to be able to leave the practice and have everything like handled in a way that when you go home, you're not talking to your spouse about all the bad things that happened at your office today, right? Because your spouse doesn't want to hear it. I promise you, your spouse does not want to hear it. Some of you know what I'm talking about. So that's your biggest opportunity. Clean it all up, go home, be 100% present with your family, and now you're ready to go in for tomorrow. The other thing out for the morning meeting, the other thing I would tell you about in the afternoon meeting is, as soon as it's over, put your focus on whatever needs to be communicated in tomorrow's meeting. Take a quick look. Where are we in the schedule tomorrow? Where's the opportunities? Where's the shortfalls? What do I need to do? Spend a few minutes getting your thoughts together, getting your game plan together, so when you come into the meeting, you've done that preparation, you've done your due diligence like we talked about in last week's segment, so you're ready to go forward in your morning meeting, and it doesn't fall into discussion. So, in your afternoon meeting, if you're having an afternoon meeting, number one, you got to have an afternoon meeting for all the reasons that we talked about. If you're not having an afternoon meeting, you're not cleaning anything up, you're not getting solutions, you're not moving the ball forward, you're running really hard throughout the course of a day, and there's no end point, there's no solution base, there's no coaching, there's no accountability going on. You come in the next day and you just start all over. You're not moving forward. You got to have an afternoon meeting, and how to make it not suck are the things that we've talked about. Number one, have one person be in charge of the afternoon meeting. Number two, have a second person be, for the purposes that we're talking about here, perhaps a sergeant at arms. The person who's controlling the meeting is making sure that we're following this pre-plan, this layout, this agenda, for lack of a better word. The person who's the sergeant at arms, your job is to make sure that you're looking at the tracking and we're not missing any opportunities all around the horn. The person who's running the afternoon meeting, don't let it fall into discussion, because you're going to make sure that the communication is either in the form of a request, it's in the form of a recommitment, right? This didn't happen, here's what's going to happen tomorrow. Or it's in the form of a direct communication to somebody to get to a solution. And in that case, a solution, we're not going to stop the communication unless we have a solution. And a solution is only a solution if we have something specific that somebody's going to do or be different with the date that it starts. And you're ending your meeting on putting those relationships back in place by communicating anything that happened that you need to clean up with the people on your team. At the end of the day, you guys are all in this together, and the care that you deliver your patients is 100% dependent upon the fact of whether or not you guys are all together on the same page. And if your relationships are not at the highest level, you're not going to be able to take care of the patients, because you're not getting support from one another. You're not asking for help. And I know that nobody listening to this has any challenges with that. But you know that there are people out there, like in the other parts of the world, who have those challenges. And so you want to share this with them so that they don't run into these challenges. Right, Mr. Producer?
That's right.
Anything you want to add to that? Okay. All right. So those are the things that I would have you do to make sure that your afternoon meeting doesn't suck, and to make sure that you're moving your ball forward to be as successful as you possibly can be. If you want to know more details about this, if you'll reach out to us, we'll send you some very specific information on how we run afternoon meetings that would be way too granular for a video like this. But if you'll reach out to us, we'll be glad to have some one-on-one conversation with you and send that information to you in a PDF, and we can talk about it if you like. Thank you for joining us. I hope this is beneficial. If you found it beneficial, please share it to somebody who needs it. You can find us at thecrabtreegroup.com. Go to the YouTube channel. Hit subscribe so that everything we do, whether it's this or any of the other channels, goes directly to your inbox. And in some other areas, we focus much more granular than we do on this channel. So I'd like you to be part of those closed group channels. Thank you for joining us today. This has been Dental Profits webinar series. The show is all about you having happier clients, better results, making more money, and enjoying the ride. I'm Sean Crabtree. I'll see you next time.